Hey everyone. Today we are starting into our next topic, which is taking a look at the judicial branch. So the judicial branch is outlined in Article 3 of the Constitution. It's our third branch of the government. We've previously taken a look at the legislative branch and the executive branch, kind of tying in the bureaucracy with that. So now we're taking a look at the judicial branch. Again, this is under Article 3, and this is the part of the government where the courts are located at. So let's take a look. Let's break down Article 3. We start by taking a look at Section 1. This is actually the shortest article in the Constitution. Not a whole lot outlined for the Supreme Court or the court system. Our founding fathers really didn't have too much to say about creating courts, but they knew that it was necessary, and necessary for the courts to be accessible to the average person. So in Section 1, we see that all judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court. Okay, so we see here right away the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land of the United States. Congress may establish any inferior courts. So if there's a larger territory or some lower courts to deal with the more petty crimes, those are going to be dealt with at an inferior court level. Those are created by Congress. Okay, so we're starting to see some checks and balances here a little bit. Judges are going to hold office during good behavior. Okay, so what we see here is that they serve for life. As soon as a justice or a judge has been nominated and confirmed in, they serve for life as long as they have good behavior. Our Supreme Court justices and any other federal judge is going to receive compensation for their services. Okay, so that's all it says in Section 1 of the Constitution. They don't outline how much a judge is going to make or anything like that. All they're taking a look at is saying, we are going to pay our judges. So some of the most recent data that we have as far as income and salary, in 2013, our justices made anywhere between $223,000 to $213,000. So it's quite a bit. Taking a look at Section 2, we're seeing even what kind of crimes or issues do the Supreme Court look at. Okay, so we know that based on Section 2, our courts are going to handle a case based on if it is something in the Constitution, if there has been a law created in the United States, anything that has to do with a treaty, any ambassador issues, as well as maritime jurisdiction. Okay, so if a crime has been committed out on open waters, a federal level court is going to deal with that issue, right? Because a state can't handle that. If it's out in the open waters, which state decides which cases to deal with? So that's why we have it as our federal court is going to do that. The Supreme Court is going to look at any controversies between two or more states. Most of the time, this is going to deal with like border issues, things like that, or maybe trade, economy issues. And the reason, again, for that, same when we think about open water crimes, who would handle this issue? Okay, so if Michigan and Ohio are fighting over Toledo, we can't have Michigan try this issue in court, but we can't have Ohio either because they're both having something at stake. Okay, so we need a third party to deal with these court issues, leading us to it being in the federal courts. Trial of crimes are held by a jury and in a state where a crime was committed. This, again, is a part of the Constitution outlining who's dealing with what crimes. So if I commit a crime in Michigan, for a Michigan law, that issue is going to be tried in Michigan. Okay, so think about location. Again, where was the crime committed? it's going to be tried in the same location the crime was committed. Under Section 3, this is an interesting section because it basically is just defining a certain word, treason. Okay, there's a whole section in the Constitution which outlines and defines what is treason and how do we deal with treason if someone's committed it. Okay, so treason, according to Section 3, is someone who is levying war against the United States. If someone has been found to be aiding and comforting the enemy, so actively helping them. You cannot be tried for treason unless there were 2 witnesses or you confess yourself. Okay, so we can't just have a military general come up and be like, hey, that general committed treason. Okay, you can't just do it based on one person's word. There needs to be multiple witnesses, or the person comes forward themselves and says, yep, I committed treason. So once the Supreme Court determines, yes, you've committed treason, it is actually then, again, a system of checks and balances. It's up to Congress to declare what the punishment is going to be if you have been found guilty of treason. And, fun little stipulation, if you have committed treason and you're found guilty, your descendants cannot inherit anything from you. Okay, so you can't go out guns a-blazing saying I did it for my country and now all of my children can inherit my farm or all of my life savings. Nope, that's a way again to keep people from wanting to commit treason. If you're found to be against the United States actively, then that's a way to punish not only you, but also your children, your grandchildren, things like that. Now that would have been really important back in the 1700s. Okay, so your land is everything that your family might have, and most of the time it's passed down from father to son. Now if father creates treason, son can't take over that family farm, and it really disrupts the progress that a family is going to make in terms of their wealth. So based out of those 3 sections, like I said, it's a really short part of the Constitution outlining a really important branch. Some things that we need to notice. States can create their own rules. They can create their own court jurisdiction, selection process, and determine how large state courts are going to be. Okay? So we don't even really hear about state court systems, but we know that inferior courts can be made. Justices are getting their position of power from the people that nominate them. Okay, so the president that nominates them, that's how they're getting into that position. However, they are not loyal to anyone but themselves. Okay, so typically after a justice has been put on the Supreme Court, they don't talk about which party they may be aligned with. They don't have to do any favors for the president that nominated them in. It's also important to notice that we don't see a guaranteed budget anywhere. So technically, Congress could not allocate the Supreme Court any money. Okay? Same with the president. The president does not have to dole out any of the executive branch funds to the judicial branch. Okay? So again, we aren't loyal by money. We aren't loyal by politics. The Supreme Court and federal court systems are intended to be completely independent from the others. Okay? Congress does control the salary of a justice. Okay? But really we don't see any of these major budgeting issues between the branches. They usually don't use money as a way to harm the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is highly respected in the United States. The Supreme Court is not going to give advice to the other branches. Okay, so the only way that a court case is going to arise is if there's been injury. Okay, so let's take, for example, a couple of years back, we had a travel ban that was signed as an executive order. Now, there was a lot of rumor on the streets, talks in the news about this order coming out. And a lot of people were questioning, why isn't this being dealt with by the courts? Why isn't the Supreme Court getting involved with this travel ban? And it was because there was no official injury yet. The law hadn't been technically broken anywhere. Nothing was found unconstitutional until there officially is someone affected. But just having rumors or discussing a law is not going to end up in the court cases. The law has to be made, someone has to be harmed or be denied a right in order for a court case to then end up in the Supreme Court system. Now here's a fun fact. Any elected federal official, including those nominated, can be impeached. Okay? And up to this point in time, we have had 14 federal judges impeached. Okay? So, judicial branch has the most amount of impeached officials out of either legislative branch, executive. So let's break down what is the different type of federal court systems. Okay, Supreme Court is not the only judges for the government. At the very, very top, you have the United States Supreme Court. They are the end-all, be-all of an issue. Whatever is determined by the Supreme Court, that is it. That is the ruling. It can't be challenged any further. Before an issue gets to a Supreme Court, people are going to end up in the U.S. Court of Appeals, okay, or the circuit courts is what they're sometimes called as well. These are where people take their court case issues and say, I don't agree with what the previous ruling was, and I want this court case to be looked at a second time. In order to even get to those two courts, you have to start out in a U.S. District Court, okay, and that is going to be the first line of defense. As soon as you feel like there's been an issue or you've been denied something, you're going to take your issue and submit it to a U.S. District Court. Okay, so you start out in a district court. If you don't like what the judge says, you can have it appealed in the U.S. Court of Appeals. If you still don't like what the ruling is, it can be submitted to the United States Supreme Court. Now, since those are the three big top of the tree, and they all kind of flow into each other, there is a separate entity for federal courts, and these are going to be dealing with any military court issues, tax court, okay, or anything dealing with treaties and other nations. Okay, so just know that military court, while it is a federal portion, those crimes or those court cases are not heard in U.S. district courts. So how do you determine if you're going to go to a state court or a federal court? Because we have Michigan courts, but then we also have federal courts, and sometimes they deal with the same thing. So in a federal court, this is called limited jurisdiction, where federal courts can only hear cases based on federal law or the United States Constitution. Okay, so say that you got a speeding ticket on I-94 for going 75 in a 70. Technically, that is a state of Michigan law, so you can't try to have this ticket heard in a federal court system. Okay, so federal courts only hear federal law or constitutional issues. So a plaintiff, who is the person who's bringing forward the case, typically they're the person saying injury was done against me, they make that initial choice. Am I going to have my court case heard in the state system, or am I going to have my court case heard in the federal court system? We see another term when we take a look at jurisdiction, which is called diversity jurisdiction. This does allow state law issues to be heard in a federal court system, but there's stipulations that come along with that. Okay, so even though I just gave the example of the going 75 and a 70, getting a ticket, sometimes there will be federal court interference with those state laws. That is going to be under these circumstances. The plaintiff, so the person bringing forward the case, must be located in a different state than the defendant. Okay, so Here's a story for you. This was maybe 20 years ago, there was an adoption case where a young couple adopted a little girl, and they were living in Ann Arbor. And so this little girl was born in Chicago, Illinois. The adoptive parents got her, took her back home to Ann Arbor, Michigan. Well, the girl's birth father never knew he had a daughter. So when he found out he had a daughter, he said, well, I don't agree to adoption, and I want to raise her. And so the father, the birth father, took the adoptive parents to court, saying, I have a legal right to my daughter. The adoptive parents said, nope, we signed all of the legal documentation based on Michigan law. Well, Illinois and Michigan got into it of whose laws were more correct, right? Well, we can't try this in a Michigan court, and we can't try this in an Illinois court. So, because the plaintiff and defendant were from two different states, the issue was heard in a federal court system. You also have to have the issue or injury worth more than $75,000 in order for a court case to be heard in the federal court system, except if you're dealing with a criminal case. Okay, so that is like murder, burglary, that kind of issue. Those aren't going to be heard in the federal court system if it's dealing with a state law. So let's break down. First step, second step, third step. How does a court case even work its way through the federal court system? It's going to start out, like I said earlier, in that district court. Now, a district court has what we call original jurisdiction. They are the first people hearing a case. They're not reviewing anyone else's decisions. There hasn't been previous decisions made. They are the first ones hearing the injury and issue and making the first decision on it. Okay? These are general trial courts of the federal court system. Each district has at least one U.S. district judge. Okay? We see here on the map in the lower right-hand corner of the slide the three different areas that we have here in Michigan. Primarily, we're looking at the Lower Peninsula on the west side, since that includes Calhoun County, right? So we're looking at our district. We see that there are district courts in Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, and Lansing. Okay, so there are three district courts for a portion of Michigan. Each district judge is appointed by the president, obviously confirmed by the Senate. So the judge that is in Kalamazoo, they were put into that position by the president. Okay. District courts are going to deal with criminal and civil cases. Okay, criminal cases are like robbery, arson, murder, things like that, whereas civil cases are more like adoption, divorce, name change, taxes, those kind of more everyday cases. When we take a look at who is in charge, we have the district court judges. They are kind of like the CEO of that area business. They manage the court, and they manage all of the employees that are working underneath of them. They serve, again, so long as they are maintaining that good behavior. Okay, so these people in the district court level serve for life. Currently, we have over 670 district judges across the United States. Okay, so a lot of different judges across the states. Underneath a district court judge, we have what's called a magistrate judge. These are basically an assistant to the district court judge. They are going to serve for shorter amounts of times, but they're going to oversee some of the trials that maybe a district judge doesn't have time for, or they'll deal with all of the paperwork leading up to the actual testimonies, witness statements that are going to happen. Okay, next we're going to take a look at circuit courts. These are all of the different Court of Appeals. Okay, so we have 11 different appeals courts throughout the United States. All of the different colors represent one singular district. So if you are not happy with what a district judge has said, you can appeal it and ask for someone else to take a look at the issue. So if you are living in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and you want to take an issue to the appeals court, you actually have to drive all the way down to Kentucky because or Ohio, sorry. You have to drive all the way down to Ohio in order to have your court case heard. Same with if you're coming from Nashville, Tennessee, you have to drive all the way up to Ohio to see that one judge. So, what do our circuit courts look like? Well, they have what's called appellate jurisdiction. Okay, so district courts have that original jurisdiction. Circuit courts have appellate jurisdiction, which means they are appealing. They are hearing the court case for a second time and reviewing a previous judge's decision. So, taking a look at the Court of Appeals, there are 12 federal Court of Appeals, 11 for the states. That 12th federal court is for military issues. Michigan is in the 6th Circuit Court District. And again, like I said when we were taking a look at that map previously, if you have an issue or you want a federal court case to be reviewed, you're going to have to go all the way to Cincinnati, Ohio. Circuit court judges typically don't work by themselves. They aren't the only ones making a decision. At the circuit court level, there's going to be a panel of judges. And it's going to depend on how many judges are in that panel. It could be from 3 to 6, okay, somewhere within that range. Again, these judges are appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and they also are going to be serving for life. Now, any case may be appealed to the court once a district court has finalized a decision. So you aren't happy with being found guilty or you don't agree with the penalty that was given by a judge, you can appeal the issue and it's going to be heard by another court. Now, Okay, our final step in the process is taking a look at the Supreme Court. This is the highest court of the United States, which means that they are hearing the issues from circuit courts, maybe state Supreme Courts, and again, it has to be on constitutional issues or any federal law. Now, hearing a state Supreme Court issue. This may be if a court case has gone all the way through the Michigan court systems and gotten to the Supreme Court, and it's also over an issue that is within the Constitution. Okay, so in a way, our state Supreme Courts are also appellate jurisdiction, where they are not the last step in the ladder. It potentially could go a farther step in being heard by the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court is not always going to take every single case that they are given. In order to even request a case to be heard by the Supreme Court, there's going to be a writ of certiorari that's going to get submitted. And it essentially lays out, here's what happened, here's all of the evidence, here's all of the testimony statements, here's what happened in the district court, here's what happened in the circuit court, now we still can't decide and we want you to take a look at it. Okay, it's making a request. If the writ is not granted, so the Supreme Court get that application and they go, no, we're not going to listen to this, then whatever the decision was previous, that stands. That opinion stands. It's not going to get overturned. And only really about 1% of those writs are going to be even selected. Okay? Thousands of court cases are submitted to the Supreme Court. Maybe only 300 are going to be heard by the Supreme Court within a year. There are 9 justices currently on the Supreme Court. Constitutionally, there doesn't have to be a limited number. It just happens that we have 9 right now. Previously, we've gone down to only having 5 justices, and I think at one point we even got up to 11 or 12 justices. There are 8 associate justices and 1 chief. Typically, if you are a justice on the Supreme Court, you have been a law professor. Most likely you have served for quite a long time in either a district court or a circuit court. And they typically do their business from fall until late summer. Okay, so they do take a chunk of time off to recess, and that is when they're either looking up more issues, becoming educated, exposing themselves to different society conversations, and being able to step away from that role of a justice. So when we look at our different branches of government, we always want to consider how are they interacting with the other branches? How are they being checked? How do they have powers over other branches? We know that Congress determines the creation of any lower circuit courts as well as the salary for the justices. But when it comes to the executive branch, we're going to see that the president is appointing all of these federal judges. That is a huge power to have, that one person is selecting who's running a different branch, an entirely different branch of the federal government. So the president is selecting our district court judges, our circuit judges, and all of our Supreme Court judges, but only when there are vacancies. Okay, a new president can't just come in and just wipe the slate clean. No, you serve for life. And whenever you choose to step down or you pass away, that is only when there's going to be a new seat open and the president gets to choose and nominate someone for the Senate to then hear. Now, because the president has to get confirmation by the Senate, we typically see an action called the senatorial courtesy. This is when a president has a person in mind, and they're going to go to those senators and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I plan on nominating this person for the Supreme Court. Will you help me get this person passed along and confirmed? Or, hey, do you have any background information on this potential judge that I'm about to nominate? Now, after a judge has been nominated and confirmed, they have no loyalties to anyone from there on out. They aren't loyal to the state they were originally from. They aren't loyal to the president who has nominated them in, and they have no loyalty to any senator. Okay, so typically, a judge isn't even going to announce their party. And we kind of want that, in a way, where we know that they aren't going to be tied down to political campaigns. They are totally meant to be separate. Now, we do see 2 different ideologies when it comes to a judge. If a judge is being brought into the court system, people are typically going to question, are they judicial self-restraint or are they more judicial activism? A judge who is known as being more self-restraint or conservative means that when they look at the Constitution, it is what it is. The founders meant exactly what they wrote down, there is no interpretation, and this is how we move on as a country. Okay, so that's the self-restraint. Someone who is known as judicial activism or liberal, they're looking at the Constitution and saying, well, let's interpret what they meant. Times have changed. There's been evolution for technology or social issues, wars, and the framers could have never known about where this country would kind of lead, so we need to be able to interpret and apply these ideas to our current situation. Okay, so that's typically what presidents are going to look at when they're trying to select a judge. Are they more conservative or are they more liberal? So these are currently our Supreme Court justices, minus Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who passed away late last year. Okay, so we have 9 justices, and Amy Coney Barrett was the most recently nominated and confirmed justice to take the open seat that Ruth Bader Ginsburg left behind. Okay, so here's another image that you can kind of see, as well as tenure. Who has been a justice for the longest time? We have our Chief Justice, John Roberts. Okay, your Chief Justice is typically the person who has been serving on the court for the longest. And then underneath are all of the different justices who have come after him, with our most recent, Amy Coney Barrett. All right, guys, that is all I have for you today. Please, once you get done watching this video, you're going to go take a look at the video structures of the court systems. If you have any questions, please make sure to let me know. Reach out. Talk to you soon.